You're listening to IRN, the Inception Radio Network, Chicago, Illinois.
Welcome to this Inception Radio special event, Free John Ford. Hi everybody, this is MJ aka Mike Lucas. I'm here to talk to you about John Ford. As many of you know, John Ford in 1996 was the lead investigator of the Long Island UFO network. He was arrested without a proper search warrant and had been incarcerated ever since in a psychiatric ward up in New York. I was able to talk to John for 15 to 20 minutes and hear his side of the story and ask him some interview questions. This was made possible by Marilyn and Dick Carlson of the Oklahoma UFO and Paranormal team. And of course, I thank my co-host, Ken Storch. Following the interview, we will have bonus coverage of MJ, myself, and Ken Storch's interview with Peter Moon diving deeper into the John Ford case. So sit back, everybody, put your seatbelts on, and let's free John Ford. John, what went down back here? What's the cause of all this? Why are you in the ward there? You want to tell everybody?
Well, we were litigating my charges, and my attorney, for want of a better excuse, agreed to send me up to have me examined for a year at Mid Hudson. And when I came back down, they said I was not compos mentis, and they said I was suffering from a mental illness. And when we went next to court, the DA's office offered us a plea bargain, a plea to mentally incompetent, not guilty. And my attorney said, take it, it's the best deal you're going to get. He said, these people don't want to compromise with you. And I said, okay. And I said, I'll do it, and I took the plea. But underneath the surface, there was also the possibility that if I had gone to trial, I could have been convicted and would have been subjected to the loss of my pension, disability provisions from Social Security and my workman's comp settlement. So we did this in order to protect my benefits.
Okay. Now, John, you're the founder of the Long Island UFO network. Co-founder. Okay.
The other one was Richard Stout, who's no longer with us.
Okay.
He dropped out because of personal reasons. And the two of us founded the organization, and we had some difficulty in the beginning, but it just took off like wildfire, and we started receiving reports and investigating, and the phone hasn't stopped ringing.
Okay. So what led up to all this happening? What type of evidence did you guys come across that led up to all this?
Preston Nichols approached me, Preston Nichols of the Montauk Project, who was a science advisor to our organization, and he approached me with information that there had been a crash outside of Riverhead of a UFO, and that this was the basis for the 1995 East End forest fires that almost destroyed the town of West Hampton Beach. And we did a cursory investigation, and we didn't get any definite information, but we kept it in the back of our heads that something may have happened there.
Mm-hmm.
Now, speed up now about 7-8 months later when I met Mr. Joseph Mazzucchelli, my co-defendant on the case. And he came to me, said he wanted to get involved and wanted to join the organization. So I took his membership, and he kept coming over, hanging out at my house, trying to get involved in the organization. And one day he borrowed my pickup truck, said he needed to transport his girlfriend's personal property from her family's house up to his uncle's house in Port Jefferson Station to secure it. So I let him have the truck, and he had it for several days. And lo and behold, the night that we were supposed to go meet with an eyewitness to the Southaven Park crash, Mr. Mazzucchelli was forced off the road by a car with 4 big burly men in it. And he was severely beaten about the face and about the body, and left with a warning, stay out of our business. It's no business of yours. So he came to me the next day and he told me about it. And he identified himself as being an Israeli intelligence agent who had been sent directly from Tel Aviv to protect me and my organization, and to also bring us into an international coalition of UFO researchers and organizations and intelligence agencies devoted to the overturn of the U.S. government's UFO cover-up. He told me in 1989, Israel had shot down over the Negev desert a UFO, and they captured it and its crew. And when they went to the United States to ask for information about the alien presence on our planet, they were turned down and given a cold shoulder. So Israel then decided to form a coalition of nations to oppose the cover-up and to expose it. So I agreed to join it, but in the next breath he told me that there had been contracts taken out against me by politicians on Long Island to keep me from revealing the cause of the East End forest fires, because they had set the forest fires in populated areas. Now they were not supposed to do that. The spaceship went down outside of Riverhead in a wildlife preserve, and it was in a populated area, and they supposedly set forest fires there that would conceal the recovery operation. But John Powell, the Republican Party chairman for Suffolk County, got involved and ordered the forest fires set further east in populated areas near the Pine Barrens, which is a forest preserve on Long Island for undeveloped property, and in an effort to destroy the Pine Barrens and make the land available for subsequent sale and development. And they were afraid I was going to expose this, so they had taken out contracts to have me killed.
Okay.
And he told me that he was there along with a protective force of some 25 Israeli agents to protect me and make certain that no harm came to me.
Interesting. Now, were you given any evidence on this crash, or pictures, or any physical evidence?
No, we had not begun investigating it because of the death threats and the assassination attempts. Mazzucchelli told me not to go out there. I'd be looking for trouble. He said that's the first place they'll look for you. So we didn't organize a search. But we did learn from Dottie and Gary Tritt, UFON members, that They are hypnotherapists, which we employ to do regression on abductees, that their receptionist had contact with a gentleman by the name of Steve Marinara, who lives outside of Riverhead. The gentleman sells used cars, and he had sold the receptionist a used Camaro, and she got a story from him that he had seen the UFO crash, discovered it, reported it to the FBI, and was subsequently debriefed and interrogated by the FBI and intimidated into silence. So we did manage to contact Mr. Marinara, and he did deny the story, but everything else about his story fit into place. So obviously he was lying.
Okay. Now, what led up to your arrest? And of course, we all know that the arrest, there was no proper search warrant for your arrest and all that stuff.
Well, the search warrant was defective.
Okay.
It had the wrong date on it. And the police corrected it when they went to file the search warrant with the court papers. The only copy that had the correct date on it was the one that was filed with the court. So we tried to get the search warrant removed, but we failed in our efforts. And it was something that we would have to leave to the appellate division of the court to rule on and exclude. So the night that I was arrested, we were there, myself, Mr. Kevin Cooch, a friend of Joe Mazzucchelli, and myself at my home. We were waiting for Preston Nichols to show up to recalibrate a set batch of new Geiger counters I had brought for the organization, and which had to be recalibrated. And I had a piece of radium that I got from a friend of mine that was low-yield radium, a radium plug that's used for testing purposes. And we were joking about it, joking about the politicians, and we were joking about using it to eliminate the politicians, get rid of them and their assassination plots. When we went outside to my pickup truck to retrieve it, that's when the police showed up in force and arrested us. Now, Mr. Cooch turned out to be a confidential informant. He was wearing a wire, and he did take down our statements on tape. That was subsequently rebroadcast by police circuits to the DA's office in Hop Park, Long Island, and they took it down on tape and then sent it out to be processed.
So what were you accused of? What was the general?
We were accused of conspiracy to commit murder, and a few other lesser charges. And the tape recording was their principal means of evidence, and they used it in the grand jury to get an indictment, and they subsequently were going to use it at trial. And the version that they submitted to the court was horrible. It contained statements in there that I know I didn't make, and statements that Mazzucchelli made that he said he never made, and there was something wrong with the recording. So about 5 years ago, one of my people, Mr. Joseph Joseph Supato, who is employed by the Defense Intelligence Agency as a systems analyst. That night of the arrest, he was tape recording the transmissions from the police in front of my house, and he took down the recording of the statements that we made. Now, he did a thorough analysis. This gentleman does this type of work for the government. He did a thorough analysis of the tape recording that they played for the grand jury, and his version of the recording was 53 minutes long. The recording that they played in the grand jury was 23 minutes long.
Okay.
So obviously there was some tampering with the evidence, big time, and he's going to prove it once we get into court.
Now, have you been in contact with Mazzucchelli then at all?
Yes, I have. I've been in touch with Mazzucchelli. He did 5.5 years. He took a plea bargain, and he got out, and he he retired from the Mossad. He's living in Long Island now, and he and I have communicated. He's willing to come and testify at my court proceedings, and he says, I'm going to bring evidence that will blow the case wide open.
Very cool, very cool. Now, when is this court case scheduled?
Well, it isn't a criminal trial.
Sure.
This is an administrative trial underneath the mental health law. I'm challenging the retention order. Every 2 years we come up for review, and you're given a chance to present your side of the story. And the retention order goes in effect for 2 years. Now, we are going to file a writ of habeas corpus to bring the case into court, and we're going to put in as the new evidence mandating the writ of habeas corpus, Mr. Zapato's tape analysis. So we're going to fight this and fight until we're vindicated.
Okay. I know you're getting short on time, so John, what happens when you're released? What after the place once you leave?
Well, if I'm lucky and I challenge the retention order and get two options. One, I get transferred to a civil hospital for 5 to 7 years, further treatment, or I can be transferred back to the street, since it's our allegation I do not have a mental illness. And those are the two possibilities. Now, if I go to a civil hospital, I will still keep on challenging the case in court. And if I do get lucky and I'm sent back out on the street, I'm going to sue Suffolk County Police, Suffolk County DA's office, and the Office of Mental Health in New York State.
Okay. Are you going to continue with investigating any cases in the area and with your? Okay.
Yes, we are.
Very cool.
This was done deliberately to destroy MUFON and destroy our organization. They may have succeeded in preventing us from holding meetings these past 18 years, but they haven't destroyed it. I've been in touch with a number of our members. I've been in touch with a number of our investigators, and they're just waiting for me to come out, and they're going to pick up and investigate and report to the public on our findings.
Thanks for listening, Planet Earth, and enjoy the upcoming interview with Peter Moon. Now, Peter, we'll just get into John Ford a little. We'll kind of start there. Now, how did you start talking to John Ford? Or when did you start dealing with John Ford and his situation?
All right. I was called to a meeting at the home of Preston Nichols, who lived in East Islip, New York, on Long Island. And I think we're talking 1997. And John Ford was there. It was the first time I actually met John. And of course I knew who he was very well because Preston Nichols was the scientific advisor for the Long Island UFO Network, which John Ford was the president of and had founded. It was the most active organization for investigating UFOs, sightings and perhaps more importantly, UFO crashes, of which there were 3 major ones in history that John has dealt with. Now, which would be, just to name, the Center Mauritius UFO crash, the Southaven Park UFO crash, and then the one that started the Pine Barren fires in, or was associated with the Pine Barren fires in this must have been 95, I think. The Pine Barren fires of 95, I thought. Yes. So now, I was meeting John because he wanted to do a book. And because I'm a book publisher, it was a natural fit for Preston to suggest me. So I met with John in Preston's living room, and we talked about this, and it was a congenial conversation. And of course, John knew who I was. He'd heard plenty about me because I'd written the Montauk Project, Experiments in Time with Preston Nichols, and some other books as well with Preston. So, including one book on UFOs, Encounter in the Pleiades, an inside look at UFOs, which is Preston Nichols' story of his involvement with UFOs. So Preston's relationship with John was as a scientist, which he is. So the conversation, well, we talked about maybe we'll do something, we'll talk about it, et cetera, but I received a phone call very soon thereafter from Preston Nichols saying, you don't have to worry about doing a John Ford book because he's just been arrested and taken away. And this began my this began my professional association with John Ford, because I began to investigate and chronicle the case in my newsletter, the Montauk Pulse, which is a quarterly newsletter that I have done since 1993, which was to cover the events and circumstances of the Montauk Project investigation and all of the surrounding circumstances, which does include John Ford.
Hey, Peter, and I find the John Ford fascinating. What was he arrested for? What were the specific charges? Do you know?
Well, he specifically, and this was put in the paper, conspiring to kill, and I'm not using the legal charge here, I'm going to say, but this is what the newspaper said. He was charged with conspiring to murder the Suffolk County executive, John Powell. In other words, the Suffolk County executive is in charge of the politics of the county. He's an elected official. And John Powell, who was big in the Republican and conservative parties of Suffolk County in New York, which is the easternmost county on Long Island. So he was conspiring to put radium in John Powell's toothpaste in order to kill him. And this was basically what he what was all the fuss was about.
What was the motive then that John Ford allegedly was going to, what was motivating John Ford? Why did he have a will to commit murder against John Powell?
Well, there was no will to commit murder on John Ford's part, and the whole set of circumstances, which is people listening can read about in detail on the John Ford. He wrote at least an 80-page document. An 80-page plus document on the circumstances that led him to I'm just having an interference here, just a second. I'm having a problem. It's okay. It's an environmental situation. It's okay now. I was saying there's an 80-plus page document on my website, digitalmontauk.com, or the John Ford Initiative, Rick Smith's website, which you can read all the details of how this went down. People should do that. But
yeah.
So basically, John Ford was set up, and what had happened is he was working with a man named Joseph Mazzucchelli. And Joseph Mazzucchelli has a very scurrilous history and past. He's done time in jail, including over this incident, because he was representing himself as a secret agent of the Mossad, and he had certain information which convinced John Ford that he was indeed an agent, an intelligence agent. And John Ford worked in intelligence, in an intelligence capacity at St. John's University when he was a student there. And it should be stated that John Ford was a retired court officer from Suffolk County. And he went to school at St. John's, which is in Queens, on Long Island. And he had involvement, and he writes about it in the report. Now, people who are critical of John Ford will say, oh, he can't be a secret agent, and they really, the psychiatrist didn't believe it, that evaluated him. I don't think the prosecutor, certainly, they accused him of being nuts because he's claiming to have a CIA connection. And there was a station officer in Staten Island who worked with John Ford who would not back him up. And the only thing I can say is that I have a personal friend who is an attorney at law in Long Island here, and he is a graduate of St. John's. And he told me when he was on the campus going to school, the CIA not only tried to recruit him, but they were trying to recruit all sorts of people at the St. John's campus, which is a Catholic university. And so John Ford's statement about having involvement as he was a patriot trying to play counterintelligence against the Russians. But this is one of the way intelligence agencies will snag you. They'll get you as an asset. He was an asset. He was not a player deeply involved in the machinations of the bureaucracy of the CIA. And what they'll do is they'll take you as an asset, convince you to do something for patriotism or whatever other motive you might have. It may not be patriotism. It could be greed or some other thing. But John was very patriotic, and basically they set it up so he could be completely disowned and sitting there with his thumb up his rear end and made to look foolish if he ever claimed. So the station officer, which I believe he names by name in that report, I don't remember his name, on Staten Island, did not back him up, which is not the first time the CIA has never backed anybody up. But these are some of the circumstances of which John, so the motive, to get back to your question, which was the motive, was that Joseph Mazzucchelli was playing all sorts of games. He was playing games on John. He was playing games on different levels, and he was trying to convince John to just say, make a joke. We're going to make a joke. Just say it. And like they were being monitored or something. And they were being monitored. Was
Mazzucchelli wearing a wire? It sounds like he was working for some kind of law enforcement agency, and they were setting John up.
Well, yes, okay. This was the Suffolk County Police. Now, this wire, this wire was used to get him arrested, basically, but the whole wire has not been played. In fact, there's a man named Joseph Sapardo who was very much, he did a good interview as well on this subject. He has the whole recordings because he was recording them, I think, independently on his own radio because he worked at Brookhaven Labs. He is a bit like Preston Nichols when it comes to strange technology, but he has recorded.
So he recorded the entire court case? Is that what you're saying?
No, recorded the wire transmissions, the radio transmissions.
Oh my gosh! So he
of the police.
Oh,
and he had. That's incredible.
Yes, and this is part of what John would like to bring into court. Now,
yeah, I think I would too, man. If there was some other, additional information, considering that it came from a different source. Hey, and Peter, just what little I know, okay, we had Marilyn Carlson because She got involved in and talked to him for several sessions. She supplied him with a phone card, as a matter of fact, so she could talk to him. And from what little I know, I think it was entrapment. Well, I think he got railroaded. I mean that too. I mean,
to say the least, he was railroaded. But the tragedy of this, had he taken a plea, had he been found guilty of whatever they would have found him guilty of, he'd be out by now. He's still incarcerated in the Mid Hudson Psychiatric Clinic
for 16 years or something, isn't it?
Oh yeah. Yes,
that's incredible. And I don't know if you know this or not, but the Maryland was found out that the judge just recently ruled that believing in flying saucers is not a grounds for incarceration into a mental health facility, and that's a damn good thing, because I'd be hanging out.
Well, the judge said that was a comment, in my opinion, which made him look non-prejudiced on the subject. But the point, in fact, he ruled with the staff of the Mid Hudson Psychiatric Institute that basically said that he wasn't suitable for release. And this is the problem. In other words, he wasn't going to go out on a limb and say John Ford is not a danger. Now, there's a lot of political pressure involved in this situation. Now,
sounds like it.
It's important to understand that the Mid Hudson Psychiatric Clinic was formerly known as the Mid Hudson Center Psychiatric Clinic for the Criminally Insane. Now, this is dangerous, violent criminals, axe murderer type people. And
Ted Bundy is your roommate.
John was put in this facility as a very, very dangerous person. He has no history of being dangerous. He does have a history of being litigious, because he was a court officer. He would sue people, including one man named Bill Nell, who was a rival investigator who had some ethical problems. And John ran him out of the state. He moved to Florida, where his home could not be garnished or taken away. And he spent close to $50,000 of his own money on that case. So John was litigious. He knew how to use the court system. But
excuse me, at the time of his arrest, was he currently involved in investigating one of the crash saucers?
Yes. One of the, and that's covered in the report. This is the
Pine Barren fires?
Pine Barren fires that quite possibly, according to what I don't remember if this is just strictly John or if it comes from Preston too. I don't want to misquote anybody, but basically the theory is that the Southaven, or the crash, not Southaven Park, the one in the Pine Barrens, which is out near Rocky Point, there was a crash. It started a fire. Fire people were called there, and then the big accusation was that politicians had other fires started, and created this as an opportunity to create fires in the Pine Barrens, so that they could take the Pine Barrens would be gone, and then they could capitalize and use this for real estate development.
Right.
This is an accusation that was being done. So Suffolk County politics are pretty crooked. Now, as this story, as I continued to cover this story and become very much involved in it, I was visiting John in the Suffolk County Jail, which is not I never visited anybody in jail except one time in a minimum security installation. Well, this was just.
I worked in one for 10 months. Jefferson County
what
Jail.
It's like. It's not pleasant to sit there.
No, it's not a place I'd go to. For R&R.
Yes. So anyway, John, what as this case happened over the years, John Powell, the one who was the alleged victim, was found guilty and served jail time for accepting illegal bribes, for allowing dumping at the Brookhaven town dump, and also for running an illegal chop shop.
This is John Powell that also...
John Powell, the former Suffolk County executive who's now dead. And the district attorney, who was John Powell's right arm in this case, James Catterson, who's now dead too. So with these two major aggravants being dead, why is this case so important to Suffolk County, who puts political pressure on the court and to not allow John to be free? Now, this case, because it made the newspapers, it made the local news in New York City, it attracted the attention of the Washington Post. And they sent up a reporter here to say, what the hell is going on? This is the craziest story in the world. And then the reporter, who was a young reporter, gets up here, and I was probably the first person he spoke to. And he came over to my house and interviewed me. And I let him, he was so surprised to hear all these wild and crazy things about Long Island, not only the Montauk Project, but Flight 800 and all the conspiracy behind the shooting down of Flight 800, which was ruled a crash. And that was a whole scandal. And there was another.
Do you think that's tied in with what John Ford was involved in as far as that crashed?
No, not Flight 800. Not Flight 800.
Okay.
But there was another reporter on Long Island. He was the only reporter to do anything with this in a sincere journalistic way, and that's Jerry Simisi. And Jerry Simisi had worked for the East End paper, Dan's Papers, and did serious investigations, although that paper it does pseudo stories all the time, funny stories by the proprietor, or the former proprietor, Dan. And anyway, but Jerry worked for that paper and did serious investigation on Flight 800 and on the John Ford case. And he did a lot of serious investigations. So, and there's just so many, what you call illogical.
Hey, Peter.
Hey.
Do we know who supplied John Ford with the radium? He didn't have it himself.
You know, I believe the radium was it was low grade. It was used for calibrating Geiger counters. It was very low grade. I forget who supplied him. I want to say that it was this. I think I can't really say who did it. I'm not going to go out on a limb and say who supplied it, but he did get some. But it was very low. It was not going to, and besides, it was not going to kill this person because it would take such a long exposure. You'd have to be sneaking in and do it in the toothpaste and doing it on.
I was going to say, that sounds like labor intensive to me be used in low grade. I mean, trying to put that into a toothpaste, I don't know, man. It just doesn't sound.
You have to get into the Crest factory, but you'd be poisoning everybody else too.
Right. We have on guest Peter Moon, and we're talking about the John Ford case. We're going to throw it to Ken. Ken had a question for Peter.
Yeah, I mean, man, we had a fascinating discussion about it, and so we want our listeners to hear this. I asked Peter if John had, because he didn't go to trial. There were some extenuating circumstances. Had it gone to trial, would have been brought out, especially this recording that was also recorded by a second party, unbeknownst to the police department. And he didn't go to trial. He took a plea bargain. And Peter, why don't you elaborate? Because that's what I asked him on the break. Is, did he cop a plea? And it was a plea to mental health, right?
Yes, but there's a precursor to that. In the search warrant they had when they raided his place, was the date was after the actual arrest had taken place. So they had the search warrant was either incorrect. Well, it was incorrect. It wasn't. Therefore, it wasn't a legal search warrant.
Yeah, it was invalidated.
Right.
They put the wrong date on it.
And then they went back and changed their mind. They said it was a mistake. However, why would they be so imprecise? That was the first thing I noticed. So, in any case, what actually happened was he was locked up without any genuine legal justification. He was interrogated by a psychiatrist from the DA's office without his own attorney present. This is illegal. And this psychiatrist, by the way, deemed him to be sane. After over a year in jail, his resistance wore down to his own attorney's pleas, which was John Rouse, to have him accept a mentally incompetent plea. Now, John Rouse ends up working for the Highway Department, becoming commissioner of the Highway Department, which was all what John Powell was involved in. So, so this is like after it's all really, really bad in as far as having integrity. This
sounds like Jimmy Hoffa stuff.
Exactly. He said that the attorney said would preserve his Social Security benefits and would avoid a trial. Now, John, who has been drugged in the meantime, becomes more docile. He goes along with his attorney. Yeah. And as I stated to you on the break, although it completely violates one's constitutional rights, New York State has a statute that allows prisoners to be administered drugs to ensure tranquility.
Damn, man, that's scary.
John had not been convicted, and he had not demonstrated any violent behavior. So then, after accepting this plea, while under the influence of drugs, coercion, false imprisonment, and malicious prosecution, he was sent to the Mid Hudson Forensic Center for the Criminally Insane, where he has remained to this very day, which is 2015, April.
Mm-hmm.
That's...
Now, Peter, how often, I mean, I had actually a chance to talk with John myself for about 20 minutes. I mean, he sounds very competent. I mean, he did explain a lot of what was said tonight on the air. How often do you talk to him, or in touch with him, actually?
He calls me usually every Sunday, and as long as I'm home, I'm able to take the call and talk to him. We had a short talk today. And his current attorney, see, now we go back into that attorney got him locked away. So what happened was, between all this stuff with the Washington Post and all of this, and then eventually John Powell goes to jail, the A&E channel thought, wow, what a hot story. John, by the way, is got some documentary producer who wants to meet John and wants to do a documentary on the case. I don't know if this will happen. He's going to talk to John about it probably this week. But the A&E channel said, wow, this is going to make a great documentary. So they hired an attorney whose specialty is mental health cases. And they hired her to go to work on this case. And all of a sudden, A&E dropped it like a hot potato.
Wow.
Because this case is very sensitive to certain people. And we find it a little outrageous because the case should be dead. It was Powell and Catterson were the ones that ran Suffolk County and were pushing the police.
Hey, Peter, is there any indication that any of the alphabet boys from the feds are involved?
Actually, there's an indication that well, it's not just an indication, it's true. The FBI was, when they found out about this case, and from my understanding, it was through one of Preston Nichols' liaisons, who I know and met with personally, and who encouraged me to write about this. We called him the Colonel. He services nuclear reactors, and he has a position in the government / he worked in special ops. Anyway, this guy said, he said that, well, you know, he got the FBI onto the case. And the FBI, but actually in a good way, the FBI went and talked to John Powell because this was a human rights violation. Now, for all of the nefarious things that the government can be associated with, there is a core of people in the United States government who believe in the actual principles of the United States government. And these include certain people in the CIA and FBI.
You mean they believe in the Constitution and the Bill of Rights?
There are some people that do. And,
wow.
And we, they get...
I thought I was the only one.
Well, this is, I know that's the apparency. It's like you can kiss them goodbye. However, these two agents went and talked to John Powell because this was an unreasonable situation. And he was so, he was so damned arrogant and so pompous with these guys and so rude that they said, we're going to get this guy. And that's how he ended up getting caught with a chop shop operation, because the FBI stung him because he was an outrageous, bombastic fool. And,
wow.
he thought he was more powerful than the FBI, or that his connections in the government were more powerful than
his ego.
The FBI. Yes, and so this tells you we're not dealing with the FBI proper here, or even the CIA proper. The average CIA person is a bureaucrat. And so you're dealing with there's a book called The Secret Team by Fletcher Prouty, the guy who Donald Sutherland plays in the movie JFK. Fletcher Prouty talks all about how the secret team that actually runs the government, but this is a secret team, and so this is what we're dealing with here. So anyway, Andrea Rizzulli was the attorney that A&E Channel hired, and as they say, A&E dropped it like a hot potato. So John began to pay her a reduced rate out of his salary that he gets, or pension that he gets as a retired court officer. They've confiscated his Social Security to pay for his incarceration, but he still gets his pension, which is not attached. And he has been able to pay her a modest sum. However, she stayed on the case, and she screwed up the case so bad on many different levels. And the way she screwed up the case first was so let me explain. When he doesn't go to an ordinary trial, he goes to a trial with a judge that's ruling on mental health capacity, but it is a judge. And the Institute, Mid Hudson, will do a review every 2 years to determine whether he should remain in there or be released to be released at all, or be released to a less harsh environment.
Like maybe a halfway house or something.
Well, yes, exactly. But every time they rule to keep him in there as if he's dangerous. And the local psychologists there are the ones that are hired. They never give him good reports, and they're a suspect into and of themselves, like they're on the take or something. So in any case, and John doesn't have rights because he's not considered competent. So he doesn't have the ordinary rights that an ordinary citizen would. Even an ordinary criminal would have more rights. A convicted criminal would have more rights than John Ford. So this is an unfortunate situation. So what would happen is there would be a review, and they would give him thumbs down. So she hired a psychiatrist to evaluate him. And the psychiatrist evaluates him and finds that, he's fine. And John's paying a considerable amount of money for this.
Yeah.
How long does it take this asshole psychiatrist to write up the report? It takes him 9 months to write up the report.
Oh, jeez.
And this is unconscionable. If you're a psychiatrist, you should have some compassion for another person's psyche. And, how many cases was he working on that were so time sensitive? Probably not at all. And he was being paid to do this. Right. In the meantime, Andrea Rizzulli, she was naive to some extent here, but she allowed this to continue. If I was her, I would have said it's critical that you get this report done within 30 days. How long does it take to write a report?
How about getting a second opinion? Have another psychiatrist evaluate it too.
This was the second opinion.
Oh, okay.
This was the second opinion, which was favorable to him. In the meantime, this takes so damn long, and then the court dates are set up. Well, you're going to have to wait, and then the Suffolk County, who is the adversary here, which is always going to bat against him in the court. So no, and they'll you see, because you can like adjourn the dates and you can do this. So all of a sudden, 2 years expires. So they meet and they say, well, you are not competent. You have to stay here. And the whole process starts over again.
Hey, did they keep John under medication this whole time also?
Yes.
Oh, great. God damn. Holy moly.
It's a 2-year cycle, you know, and it's like, and then I think they finally had a trial, the one you mentioned earlier, where they said, well, it doesn't, where he lost. He lost, and then he was appealing it. But in the time it appeals, the 2-year thing goes by and the whole process starts over. It's all a bunch of bureaucratic red tape. Now, the last time he was up, which was, I think, in February or January, I'm not sure when it was, but the most recent case, which caused him to fire Andrea Rizzulli, was that she was supposed to answer a court summons or legal paper, and she was supposed to deliver it by legal service. And she claimed that her fax machine broke down, so she never got it. So she never got the notice from the courts, which was sent by fax, but she had to respond to it in she sent a fax in, but she wasn't supposed to respond by fax. She was supposed to send it in by legal service, somehow of legal service. I don't remember if it was by mail or whatever, but she did not do what the court stipulated she do, which any attorney knows that. So she blamed it on her fax machine, and that was the last straw with John, for her. So she's no longer on the case. So he's got a new guy who is convinced that he can get John Ford out, who's also expert in mental health law, and he is not allowed to visit John because even though he's the attorney of record, the Institute won't acknowledge him and won't let him in. So this has been very frustrating for John. He can't even see his own new attorney. And the only thing I will say in defense of Andrea Rizzulli is that, assuming that she was not working for them, and I don't know that she was way in over her head with the type of stuff that was going on here.
Yeah. Hey, Peter, let me ask you something. Was there any indication that John Ford had found evidence of a crash saucer at the time of these fires, when this all started to unravel?
Well, he had a video of the Southaven Park crash, and it was hard to say what that was. I saw the video, but it was certainly a fire that looked like it had, you know, when you're seeing a video like aluminum, it wasn't aluminum, but it looked like, you know, some of that funny material. But in any case, John was, he had his own UFO files. Now, he was also investigating the crash that occurred out at Rocky Point, and he had, and it's discussed in the document, he had met some people who were involved with that, and that whole began a whole series of strange incidents with those people. They were hypnotists. They had a hypnotist class or something. It's not fresh in my mind, but you can read it there. But he had the Long Island UFO Network he had in his house. But this was the property of the Long Island UFO Network, and they came in and took all that data.
Yeah, that's where I was going with is that his records were seized, and where are they now?
Where are they? Well, Suffolk County, or whoever took them, claims that they don't have them or that they're lost. So this is
incredible, man.
This is a whole. They had no search warrant to take these things.
Yeah, well,
this is a
it
lawsuit.
sounds like
This is a lawsuit. It's lawsuit bait. I don't know, because it doesn't have to be. There's also a man named Tony West, who was one of John Ford's friends and participants in the Long Island UFO network.
You would think there would be a chain of custody if the authorities came in and execute, even though the warrant was illegal, and it sounds like it. Anytime you put any kind of, I've written and executed hundreds of search and arrest warrants, and I don't know how it is in New York, but it can't be all that different in Colorado, and that is you have to be very, very specific who it is you're looking for, what it is you're looking for, and why do you think that it is in the space and that person has it? What are your reasons, your probable cause?
That's a good question. Like, what does the search warrant have?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That all should be a matter of public record because he was arrested. And you should be able to find out what was on, to grab his UFO files. And this is where I'm going, you know, I preached it. The people have always asked me, Peter, what's the big deal about the Constitution and the Bill of Rights concerning flying saucers? And there is a direct correlation, okay? And that is that they came into his house and took stuff that had no bearing whatsoever on his case other than the fact that it was, you know, flying saucer investigations or UFOs. They took that, and that's, I fail to see how that would be, other than the fact that they want to demonstrate that he was incompetent because he believed in flying saucers.
Well, it's a very good question, and it would be good to get a copy of that search warrant, and I'll try to remember to ask him. Now, I've run across some names here because I have one of the articles I wrote here, and this is October of 1995. John received a call from Gary and Dorothy Tritt, T-R-I-T-T, of Ronkonkoma, members of LUFON, Long Island UFO Network. And these are the professional hypnotherapists who told John about their receptionist, a woman named Patty McDonald, who had a friend. Patty McDonald was the receptionist for the hypnotherapists, the Tritts. So Patty McDonald, according to this, has a friend claiming there was a UFO crash that was responsible for the unprecedented fires in the Long Island Pine Barrens that made national news in '95. Patty found out about this after totaling her car in a crash when she was rear-ended by a delivery truck. In a nearby car was a man named Stephen Ferrer, Ferrar, F-E-R-R-E-R, a used car dealer who got out to help Patty and ended up giving her his card if she should desire a new car. Patty later visited Ferrar with her boyfriend, and a long discussion ensued about how Ferrar was dirt biking in the woods near Suffolk Community College outside Riverhead and heard something crash in the woods. Investigating, this is the used car salesman, he rode his dirt bike and soon saw a large circular-shaped object about the size of a house impacted into the ground. Here's your UFO.
Huh. Wow.
With a classic flying saucer appearance, it radiated tremendous heat and small fires were breaking out nearby. He immediately notified his brother-in-law, who happens to be an FBI agent. Here's your alphabet soup coming in. The FBI agent calls FBI headquarters in Hauppauge, which is, by the way, where my friend David Anderson used to have his time travel research center, and he also used to work out of the FBI office in Syosset. Anyway, that's an aside. Anyway, the FBI headquarters in Hauppauge, they were directed to the crash site. And when the FBI agents got there, military helicopters were already on the scene. Now, these people were subsequently debriefed by the FBI. The Tritts covertly arranged for John Ford to run into Patty McDonald. This is the receptionist. They say, oh, well, John, you can run into this receptionist of ours. And he clandestinely tape recorded her account of the events. Here's another tape recording. Now, this is legal in New York State, by the way, to record somebody. In some states, it's not. Patty then suffered a series of suspicious car accidents and then disappeared permanently. Ferrar would later deny the entire incident, but would acknowledge having a brother-in-law in the FBI. After this, John Ford and several of his colleagues at the Long Island UFO Network began to suffer suspicious break-ins, car mishaps, and surveillance.
Weird.
This is coupled with suspicious deaths of UFO investigators. I don't know who I'm referring to in that article. But after all of this, John's fate becomes sealed when Joseph Mazzucchelli appears on the scene. He is
excuse, I have a question.
Go ahead.
Does John Ford know Peter Mazzucchelli prior to this?
Joseph Mazzucchelli.
Joseph, I'm sorry, yeah, Joseph Mazzucchelli.
I don't think so.
Who introduced him to him then?
Well,
do you know?
Let me read here and see, because I'm reading out of my newsletter, which is excerpted.
Okay, yeah.
This is excerpted from the document that's on the website. And by the way, if you go to digitalmontauk.com, you'll see John Ford UFO case on the bar, and you can just go in there and download about 5 PDF files, which you can read the whole thing in his handwriting. Now, anyway, Mazzucchelli is a mechanic with a criminal record who is also registered with the Suffolk County DA as a paid police informant. He brags of his family's mob connections and claims he is a lieutenant colonel in the Mossad. Mazzucchelli claims he wants to join Long Island UFO Network. But he ends up befriending Ford and draining him financially by asking for money, but promising John financial support from the Mossad, who he says want to blow the cover off the government suppression of UFO disclosure. So he's scheming them. The Mossad are good guys. They want to blow the cover. So we don't even know that the Mossad has anything to do with this. As Mazzucchelli is demonstrably able to orchestrate the manipulation of an extensive amount of people with government connections, he convinces Ford that he is legitimate and should be listened to. So this is a lot of instances where he sort of proves himself.
Did he join MUFON?
LUFON. This is not MUFON. This is
I got you. LUFON. Did he join it?
Apparently so, yeah.
Wow, okay.
Mazzucchelli is the first one to tell Ford that the initial fires from the crashed UFO were deliberately ordered by the feds to prevent disclosure of the UFO. So Mazzucchelli is feeding him this information that hey, this was the fires were to prevent disclosure of UFOs. Later, there would come in this idea that politicians were doing it, including John Powell, who were taking to take advantage of it by setting more fires south of Sunrise Highway to capitalize on the real estate.
And there were indeed fires that were set over there by that, right?
Oh, it was on national TV. I had just been at the memorial service for Marjorie Cameron, the wife of Jack Parsons, in California, and I'm flying home from Anaheim, and I say, oh my God, these fires on Long Island, what the hell is this? My flight might be delayed.
I kind of remember that, yeah.
On national news, and I'm saying, God, and I didn't realize it was tied to John Ford and all of this stuff. I was going to have my hands full when I got home.
Yeah, you know what? There's your link. I mean, this crash saucer, whatever it was, that started these fires, and then you have these other fires being set. And I can see that Powell would think that Ford was investigating them for, real estate scam or whatever the hell it was that they were doing.
Indeed, and I just want to make a comment on Marjorie Cameron. She was the wife of the widow of Jack Parsons, and she was involved in the Babylon working with L. Ron Hubbard and Jack Parsons. And the only reason I was able to see her when I eventually met her was because I thought there might be something to her statement that the magical activity they were engaged upon in 1946 might have had something to do with the UFO phenomena of 1947. And she appreciated that I said that, and here I am at her memorial service, and here we have the UFO theme entering in there again. That's just a side comment.
Yeah, no, that's fascinating, though.
It is. Now, anyway, so after several weeks before Mazzucchelli reveals his alleged Mossad connections and promises Ford money, John receives a phone call from a Manhattan attorney representing Arthur Warren Klein. Now, I'm not sure who Arthur Warren Klein is. I think that might have been the name he gave himself. He wants to speak to John regarding a UFO-related incident with his granddaughter. Ford is picked up in a limo that he cannot see out of and is taken to a mansion that is supposedly in Southampton. There, he meets with an attorney named John Gallagher, Arthur Klein, and his son Robert Klein. Klein then shows photos of his granddaughter, who he said was abducted and examined by aliens with all her body hair being shaven. These are photographs. There are 6 circular welts around her navel. John suggested she should be examined by a doctor, and Klein said this could be arranged, but he wanted John to be the exclusive investigator. Now, this is actual people, Manhattan-type people, Southampton-type people, and they're saying, we've got a real abductee case here, and we want you to be the lead investigator. It's as if they're baiting him, and they want you as the exclusive investigator. They then offer a generous donation in the form of a certified check made out to Long Island UFO Network for $10 million.
Whoa.
Hello.
Wow.
This is John's testimony. John politely turns it down. Now, he turns it down because John Ford is a very ethical person, and he doesn't know what strings are attached. He receives a business card from John Gallagher, who later phones and wants him to reconsider. But the executive committee, who includes Tony West, they don't trust any of this. John can't just act on his own. So they don't trust this. So then, okay, that's sort of the overview of that. The rest of my article goes into more editorializing.
So, I mean, I'm taking notes here, and so John was actively involved in 2, apparently, UFO investigations at the time that he was incarcerated.
Well, he was involved in the Santa Mauritius crash, the Southaven Park crash, and this one. There's 3 there that were hot incidents on Long Island, none of which I ever got particularly involved in. Preston Nichols would get involved in them. I had my hands full doing what I was doing. Mm-hmm. But this was sort of a side interest to me. I am not a UFO investigator, but it goes hand in hand with sometimes it's a similarly related endeavor.
Oh, yeah, most definitely. Well, this is a fascinating case, and I don't think the final chapter has been written yet. Okay? I mean, I would love to know and see what was on that search warrant. That would be telling.
It's a good point, and there's so many irregularities with this case, and what we have here is if John Ford were to be released, and he still has to face trial, the charges against him have not been dropped. So I don't know. They certainly.
Well, I think if they deem him capable of returning and they allow him to come back in society, they can't. That would be like double jeopardy because he took that plea.
No. It's not double jeopardy. This is a mental health issue.
But that's what they held him on for 16 years. He took that plea, Peter, and when he took that plea,
he did not plead guilty. He pleaded mental incompetence.
Right.
And he did not plead guilty by reason of insanity. He pleaded that he's not competent to stand trial.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
That does not absolve him of guilt, and he's been very specific about this to me.
Oh, okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah, as soon as he becomes competent.
Now,
but then I don't know how that works.
Any reasonable judge would say, well, you've suffered enough. You did this. Okay, good. Time served in the nut house is
yeah, I think that would be enough.
I don't think they could convict him. But nevertheless, this is an issue that hangs. Nevertheless, so what you have here, this all becomes about political will. This is about politics, and it's about will. And the will of the politicians and the will of the courts. And it not only requires the will of an attorney, but an attorney who is not only clever enough, but diligent and industrious enough to overcome the obstacles. An attorney, a good attorney who knows how to do things, in this case, a superior attorney is going to have challenges because of what he's up against.
Peter,
with the beast.
Peter, this is MJ. John Ford seems like a man alone in this situation. Has he talked about his family being involved?
Well, yes. His brother and sister have not been supportive because they don't understand his UFO passion, and they've not been adequately supportive or supportive in a simpatico sort of way with him. Mm-hmm. So I know that if he was released, he would be released and he would stay with his sister initially, in which case he'd be in Westbury, which is right where I am. And if he did get released, I would be obligated to meet with him routinely just to help him get him back on his feet and to actually take up where he left off if I was living so close to him. So he's not been adequately supported as maybe a fan of his would hope by his family, although they certainly would take him in if he gets released temporarily before he could get a place of his own, because he does have a pension. He's not indigent.
That's interesting. Now, Peter, what do you think? So do you think he will investigate, jump right back into it when he gets out with the Long Island UFO Network?
Well, yes, I think he would be very interested. However, it might be politically strategic for him to say he won't. And I think there have been implications or offers or alleged offers that say if he they don't want him to do this anymore. Mm-hmm. But the bottom line is here, if he can prove false arrest and malicious prosecution, this is, he could bankrupt Suffolk County.
I'd like to know where his files went.
And what aside from that, Long Island UFO Network has their own separate case.
Right, absolutely. Because those files were jointly owned, right?
Well, it was the Long Island UFO Network. It was
that's what I'm saying. They belonged. They had a dog in the fight, definitely. So where are those files and the information on the cases that he was working on?
Yes, and the problem is it's about political will and about money. And if you had $1 billion, you could fight this case and eventually get somewhere with it, maybe. But the courts are not set up to administer perfect justice, and sometimes the imperfect justice is pretty outrageous.
Well, in this case, it sounds like it was more manipulative than injustice. It was being manipulated. I can't imagine a defense attorney looking at the warrant and realizing that they had the wrong date on it. That invalidates. You put the wrong address. That invalidates the warrant. I mean, like I said, I've done enough of them. If they're not letter perfect, the judge and DA won't go along with it. And it sounds on this case, they just went ahead and executed the warrant and deal with the details later.
Well, exactly. And then apparently, allegedly, the attorney did query the date, and they said, well, it was a mistake. And so the court...
Yeah, it was a mistake, all right. Holy cow.
Yeah. I just don't think... I think that John was browbeaten, drugged, and intimidated to accepting his plea.
Sure, I can see that. Absolutely. And once again, there's your Bill of Rights directly, against unreasonable search and seizure, the Fourth Amendment. And it sounds to me like they just kind of walked all over that one on John.
Yeah, and what I'm fascinated with here is what is the big deal? There are so many UFO cases. There are so many UFO cases out there with varying degrees of evidence. We've heard everything. Why is this case such a big deal to these people?
I think that's a legitimate question, and I certainly don't have an answer to it. The only thing that I can think of is either John was, and I'm just theorizing based upon what I know and what you've told us here tonight, but he may have stumbled across something, or they may have thought that he stumbled across something. And therefore, he became a threat, especially when he started tying the fires to this John Powell. I mean, you got national attention on those fires, And the next thing you know, they can't have John Ford saying, well, we got a fire over here and it was caused by a flying saucer. And you got the two linked together. Now you've got,
except for this, the government can cover up TWA, and you've got.
Oh I fully acknowledge that.
They can cover up 9/11. They can cover up JFK.
And that's exactly my point. I think they may have thought that he had a key piece of information. He may or may not have. He may have had it and don't even know that he had it. But the point is that they saw him as a threat.
Well, the thing about John Ford is he knows the legal system, and he is diligent about using the legal system, and he's very impassioned about what he does. He's a meticulous investigator, and he also has a history of being politically active in the Conservative Party of Suffolk County. His mom used to be the head of the Suffolk County Conservative Party, so he does have a history in understanding politics and the machination of politics. So this makes him a player on a stage which he would have certainly at that time been recognized by his rivals. Right. But it still goes on to this day because they don't want him out.
They don't want his story told.
Yeah, it's a bizarre situation.
Yeah, I just fascinated with it. Everything from him. I'd like to know more about this Mazzucchelli, though. He gets introduced at the optimum time when John's in the middle of this investigation. He gets introduced to Long Island UFO and befriends John.
Want to find more on Mazzucchelli? Read the report on the website.
Yeah, I'm going to.
And also get in touch with Jerry Simisi, CIMISI. You can find him on Facebook.
He's a reporter, right?
He's a reporter, yeah. He lives on a Rocky Point, and you could even interview him. He kept a much bigger brain file on Mazzucchelli than I did. And he's done his own writings on this as well. And
I'd like to know more about this Mazzucchelli. He's the hinge-pin in getting Ford entangled with the search warrant and being put in. He's the one that sets the ball in rolling. And
John Mazzucchelli is still involved in talking to John Ford on this case, and he wants to testify on John's behalf.
Wow, do you think he'd come on the radio?
Well, that I don't know. He might.
I'd like to talk to him, man. Absolutely.
But he's not I wouldn't want him testifying in this case personally, because he's already shown himself to be. He's got a criminal record. He has even before this, he has.
That doesn't make him all bad. It just makes him interesting.
It makes him a questionable.
It's spoken from a cop's point of view. Okay.
I didn't say he was bad. I said it makes him a questionable witness.
Oh, yeah. Well, it depends on what his. Hey, some of the most truthful people that I've met in law enforcement were criminals. Okay, they were very upfront and honest. They would tell you directly if you asked them. In some cases, their ego.
But this is the problem with him. According to what I've been told, is that he received a big payout.
I wouldn't doubt that.
He took a jail term in exchange for money. So he could be taking another payout to go on.
I'd like to know more about his police informant with the Suffolk County Police Department because, I don't doubt that at all, Peter. I could see money coming in there and persuading him.
He's a troublesome character, and I think he has no business in this case. He's not needed for this case. And this case, when it gets tried in mental health court, if that's the correct name for it, it has a jury of 6 people. It's not a 12-man jury. It's a 6-person jury. But it hasn't even got to the jurors to decide.
Yeah, but that's
the case he wants.
Yeah, he's got to get that in front of the jury, that's for sure.
Yes, and so I think the 2-year recycling of his status was about a year ago. So by the time he gets his attorney gets rolled up and gets on the rolls and is allowed to visit him, then they'll
Yeah,
have.
I don't understand that. How can the hell can they keep him from visiting his attorney? How does that work?
Red tape, paper.
Attorney has a right to interview his client or her client, whatever. And
yes, but they have to let you in the door, and they
hey, absolutely. I know what you're saying. I mean, that just blows me away. And once again, okay, there comes into the Bill of Rights. You are entitled to have counsel. You're entitled.
But let me explain something to you. If you were to walk into that Mid Hudson Forensic Institute by yourself, and you walk in there and you say, I want to talk about this and this, you would probably, I've never been there, but you would probably feel the mental atmosphere of that place, and you'd probably feel so weird, like, who are you talking to? It's like the mental space in there is probably so weird in itself. It's like you're walking into another dimension. And then you're going to go and talk, and you're going to talk to somebody at a front desk who points you to somebody at another desk, and it's kind of like, what is this about? And it's you're talking to
bureaucracy.
Yeah, it's like who's the person you strangle around the throat? There's nobody to strangle, so to speak. It's like, well, it's this, and well, what's this? Well, you've got to do this. You've got to do this, I'm sure that there is a legal formula where one could snap the whip on this, but as they say, when the attorney can't even see the client, this is a problem. He's an attorney, so he knows. Just like you've been a policeman, you know the rules. He knows the rules.
Yeah,
the rules aren't smiling on him.
I'd like to, like I said, this Massacelli that started the whole involvement with the authorities, and he came in at the right time. It sounds to me like that's being manipulative. He's a plant. I mean, that's all the alarm bells going off on me, is saying that this guy shows up and befriends John Ford, and the next thing you know, John Ford is trying to poke radium into toothpaste to poison John Powell. Okay, and from what you've said and from what Marilyn told us last time, is that this Massacelli, he's the one that was wearing the wire, and he's the one that engaged John Ford in the conversation, and that should also be part of public record. That whole transcript. That thing should be all part of a Freedom of Information Act FOIA
yes,
request.
And the case on this is pretty open and shut to anybody who has a reasonable attitude. The problem, as I say, this is all about political will.
Yeah,
it's all about political will, and to some extent money. But it's so when there's no political will, and we live in an environment right now where political will doesn't. I mean, will. Like you take the
hell, if I didn't know any better, I'd say Hillary Clinton was behind it.
the Occupy Wall Street issue.
Yeah,
it didn't solve anything, because you see, it's all, we don't have political protest like we used to have the March on Washington in the days of Martin Luther King, and all this sort of thing. Political protest isn't the vehicle it was in the 60s. It just doesn't. The government has responded to it. It controls it better. It's much more sophisticated and refined than it was in the 60s, the government itself, and that includes the secret government. So it's not...
we still have freedom of speech, and we have the right to assemble. And I agree with you that the government certainly has... I think it directs political unrest better than it did back in the day. They, being the government, learned a lot during the 60s and 70s. You had the Vietnam, you had civil rights going on, and a lot of open protests. So the government really got adept at being able to deflect and manipulate those political emotions, if you will, that occurs among the population. But the one thing, and once again, we're back to, is freedom of speech and the right to ask questions. And we still have the right to hold government accountable, whether it's the federal government or Suffolk County. And I tell you what, Peter, based upon what I've learned so far from you and Marilyn, John whether he's crazy or not doesn't make any difference. He still got railroaded. Okay, I mean, he could be crazy as a loon or, off his rocker for all I know. I'm not a psychiatrist, but the fact of the matter is, based upon what, is being painted here, the guy, they had him already convicted, tried, and signed, sealed, and delivered when they executed that warrant.
No, it's definitely an injustice.
Yeah, it's exactly what it is. It's an injustice. If that's the way it went down, that's a bunch of BS.
and we have to know it has to do with timing. There was that famous case of Reuben Hurricane Carter that Bob Dylan wrote a song about.
Oh yeah, right.
Movie, and that took such a long time to resolve itself, which Hurricane Carter was innocent, the boxer, and so this is the problem, is that things happen in their own time. This case, and we've never gotten justice over the JFK assassination.
Right.
So these things don't necessarily, but they do stick in time. Even though we didn't get justice on it, you still have people talking about it, still hoping to get.
Well, I will. I'd like to know who turned Massacelli on to John Ford from the Suffolk County agency. How did they get a hold of him to get in and involve himself? Because I worked with a number. Well, I worked undercover for 5 years at Vice and Narcotics. I had a number. There were two types of people that worked for us. There was informants that had a beef. Okay, that we had what we called a hammer over them. We had them on another charge, and they wanted to help us, so they became an informant. And then you had operatives, which we would hire, okay, and they would go out and introduce one of us. They would befriend an organization and then introduce one of us after they got in, and then they would bow out and we would take over. But they were the one that opened the door and got us introed into an organization if we were going to infiltrate it. And that's what it sounds to me what Massacelli is, okay, is that he was an operative. And they turned him on to John Ford, and he infiltrated basically Long Island UFO. I'd love to talk to this guy. I think
very easy. It would have been very easy for who was engineering it, because Long Island UFO Network was a public thing. So he could just show up and he could be directed there.
Okay, Peter, we are running out of time. Can you let our listeners know about your website again?
Sure, digitalmontauk.com, and I have a website with my books, and I'm just going to mention that's skybooksusa.com. The book Music of Time, which is about Preston Nichols' adventures in the music industry, also covered the John Ford case. The Music of Time, that book, because it's told in his vernacular about his adventures in the John Ford case.
Very cool. Thanks for coming on, and we really appreciate
thank you very much.
Yeah.
You're welcome. It was nice to be with you.
Okay, have a great night, Peter. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.